On December 31st, 1983, the army struck again. This time, the justification for military intervention was the blatant corruption, economic mismanagement, and the alleged incompetency of the Shehu Shagari-led civilian government. After the fall of the Second Republic, the succeeding Muhammadu Buhari-led military regime subsequently declared war on indiscipline, and Nigerians would suffer for another 10 years of draconian and repressive rule emboldened with decrees until the June 12 annulment and the short, ineffective interim national government of Chief Ernest Shonekan in August 1993. The Buhari-led regime is how many analysts refer to this government because of the enormous power that Buhari's deputy, Major General Tunde Idiagbon, the Chief of Staff at Supreme Headquarters, was thought to possess. The regime described itself as an offshoot of the previous military government of Generals Murtala Muhammad and Olusegun Obasanjo. The Supreme Military Council, comprised of Major General Muhammadu Buhari and other 19 members, came into power on January 3, 1984. Buhari then placed some senior political figures of the Second Republic in detention and held them accountable for the previous civilian administration's economic excesses. A number of organizations were restricted, including the Nigerian Medical Association, which was proscribed, and the National Association of Nigerian Students. Buhari also issued 2 decrees that limited press freedom and stifled opposition to the administration. Decree number 4 prohibited any journalist from publishing anything that could be embarrassing to a government official. Under the decree, 2 journalists, Tunde Thompson and Nduka Irabor, were found guilty. Decree number 2 provided the Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters, the authority to hold anyone deemed a security danger for up to 6 months without charge or trial. Special military tribunals superseded the courts, while the National Security Organization, the State Security Organization, was given more authority. The Buhari-led regime also initiated efforts to address indiscipline issues related to public decency, environmental sanitation, corruption, smuggling, and disrespect for flags and national anthems, among other issues. The regime proclaimed a war against indiscipline and outlined appropriate ways to conduct oneself in public, such as the obligation to form lines at bus stops. However, the state of the country's economy worsened. A comprehensive set of austerity measures was unveiled by the government. It imposed harsh import limits and high fines for currency and smuggling offenses, and temporarily blocked the nation's land borders in order to locate and deport illegal alien workers. Many local businesses had to shut down or operate at significantly reduced capacity as a result of the austerity measures, making it difficult for them to obtain necessary imported raw materials. To improve its cost effectiveness, the government itself retrenched a large number of employees. High inflation accompanied each of these moves. Even for the wealthy, living became more and more difficult as the cost of staple foods increased. Even though Buhari and his allies handled a complex national situation which enhanced efficiency, the regime's rigidity led to unrest. The latter was a primary explanation offered for General Babangida's ouster of Buhari in a palace school on August 27, 1985. However, personal ambition was a significant contributing element. Also known as the evil genius or Maradona, Ibrahim Babangida was Nigeria's sixth and most prominent Nigerian military head of state. He ruled Nigeria for 8 straight years. Babangida had a different leadership style from Buhari and was a bit more political. Buhari was firm and determined, but Babangida was clever and strategic. Since the 1966 July counter-coup, Babangida had participated in every coup in Nigeria and was unpredictable. He was a proponent of human rights when he first came to office, but with time, his record in this regard declined. The majority of the politicians Buhari had imprisoned were gradually released by him. Nevertheless, he frequently persecuted opposition interest organizations, particularly those of labor and student unions, and imprisoned numerous radical and anti-establishment people for a variety of violations. As of 1990, the terrible Decree No. 2 was still in effect, enabling these oppressive behaviors. The Babangida dictatorship proclaimed a national economic emergency a year after seizing control. According to the head of state, the country had 2 choices: either accept the terms of an International Monetary Fund loan or implement more stringent economic policies that would necessitate significant sacrifices. Although the populace preferred a non-IMF option, they soon saw that the hardships ultimately imposed did not differ significantly from the IMF's requirements. The World Bank's suggested economic recovery program was implemented as a self-imposed structural adjustment program, entailing a significant reorganization of the nation's economy. Under SAP, food prices drastically rose, unemployment rates skyrocketed, and numerous user fees for health and education services were implemented. These difficulties did not stop the administration from implementing the harsh program, which it saw as the only solution to the nation's social and economic issues. Although SAP's advantages such as lower inflation and a more balanced budget started to be felt, it was less strictly followed in the late 1980s. The Babangida regime carried out additional market-oriented economic and democratic political improvements. Significant changes were made to military federalism core concepts. Babangida also adopted the title of president, possibly to emphasize the administrative authority that he wielded. The Supreme Military Council was replaced with the Armed Forces Ruling Council (AFRC) as the principal legislative body. A new Armed Forces Consultative Assembly, acting as a transitional legislative body between the AFRC and the rest of the armed forces, was founded in 1989. Babangida skillfully increased the authority of his position despite these intricate institutional changes. The state governors and ministers were routinely replaced by him. Even allegedly powerful administration officials were strictly controlled, as indicated by the resignation of his second-in-command, Commodore Ebitu Ukiwe, in October 1986. Babangida replaced him with Rear Admiral Augustus Aikiomu, the previous chief of the naval staff. The most major of these changes happened at the end of 1989, when Babangida moved key officials, notably General Domkat Bali, the influential defense minister and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Southerners and Christians saw the developments as culminating in an AFRC dominated by Northern Muslims. The army, navy, and police leaders were all Northern Muslims, with the exception of the chief of the air staff, who was a Southerner. These Northern Muslims held the most powerful cabinet positions, including the Ministries of External Affairs, Petroleum Resources, Internal Affairs, and Defense. These measures sparked fierce debate and anti-government protest among Christians in some northern cities. However, Babangida emerged from the changes stronger than ever. Babangida also made significant changes to the civil service, police, armed and security forces, and the political system. His government's policies increased religious tensions. Beginning in 1977, when Muslims began seeking the expansion of Sharia law, which is the Muslim religious law, from state courts in the north to federal courts, the country's religious divide had become increasingly politicized. Islamization of the nation was desired by militant Islamic organizations in the north during the Second Republic. Babangida enacted several initiatives after assuming office in 1985 that were perceived as favoring Muslims and jeopardizing the secular nature of the Nigerian state. It was highly divisive when Nigeria decided to join the Organization of the Islamic Conference (OIC), a global organization of Islamic states in which Nigeria had long served as an observer. Contrary to appearances, Babangida survived numerous crises involving religion by insisting that the federation was secular. He once created a religious advisory group to serve as a mediator in disputes between different religions. A coup attempt on April 22, 1990, led by Colonel Tony Nyam, Major Saliba Mukoro, and Gideon Orkar, came dangerously close to toppling the Babangida regime. The insurgent soldiers severely damaged the presidential house at Dodan Barracks, but the head of state managed to flee. The degree of civilian engagement in this coup attempt, which was purportedly funded in part by Nigerian citizens, was a distinctive aspect of it. When the rebels took charge of the Lagos radio station, they aired a critique of the government that included criticisms of its totalitarian nature and widespread corruption, as well as threats to expel the far northern states from the federation. Babangida and all other key members of the dictatorship survived, which allowed the government to continue its policies, including the anticipated switch to a civilian administration in 1992. However, the incarceration of many journalists and other opponents of the military government, as well as the temporary shutdown of some newspapers, showed that the government realized it had overstayed its welcome and would need to impose even harsher controls than previously. The National Republican Convention and the Social Democratic Party state congresses, the only two legally recognized political organizations, were convened in the summer of 1990, at which point the campaigning got underway. Elections began, and the Social Democratic Party gained 314 out of 593 seats in the House of Representatives in the legislative elections that were held on July 4, 1992. In the House of Representatives, the National Republican Convention gained 275 members. On January 4, 1993, the military government was replaced by the Transitional Council, a civilian administration led by Ernest Shonekan. On June 12, 1993, Moshood Abiola of the Social Democratic Party won the presidency with 58% of the vote. 11 people lost their lives in rioting in Lagos on July 5, 1993, as a result of Babangida annulling the results of the presidential election on June 23, 1993. On July 13, 1993, the European Community initiated military sanctions, an arms embargo against the administration. On August 26, 1993, Babangida stepped aside for the Ernest Shonekan-led interim national government to establish a transitional civilian administration. The civilian administration, which was to hold new elections in February 1994, did not last for long. On November 17, 1993, General Sani Abacha overthrew the civilian government and called for the dissolution of parliament. This short civilian rule is referred to as the Third Republic of Nigeria and was a failed attempt to re-establish democracy in the country. When General Babangida gave the order to halt further disclosures, The 1993 election results from 21 of the country's states had already been tallied and announced, and one state's results were still pending. He claimed that the country's business survival and best interest were at stake in the annulment of the election. Many believe that the annulment was a consequence of General Babangida's covert plan to extend the military's hold on power. Many academics also think that the decision to declare the election invalid lacked any justification. General Babangida made the decision to stand down amid this upheaval and quickly formed an interim national administration led by Chief Ernest Shonekan, a Yoruba man, in order to placate the Yoruba people. The temporary administration was without a doubt doomed to failure. It was also beyond a shadow of doubt that Babangida himself was dishonest in creating it and was aware that it was only a temporary arrangement intended to help General Abacha realize his dream of becoming the head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. When General Babangida decided to stand aside and leave General Sani Abacha in charge, he retired all the other senior army officers. In addition, the decree creating the interim administration stipulated that the most senior official in the government, in this case Abacha, will assume control in the event of the resignation or death of the interim national government's leader. These appear to be all part of a premeditated scheme. In fact, the Third Republic came to an end as soon as General Sani Abacha assumed control when Chief Ernest Shonekan resigned after just 82 days in office. You can know more about the Abacha regime in our next episode.